Hello and welcome to episode 68 of All the Horrible Things with your host, Chris and Enan. That's us, man.
That's us. And today we're going to be talking about horror. Specific kind of horror. The horrors.
The horrors! It's in the title this time, yeah.
This is like the most appropriate thing we've ever talked about. All the Horrible Things talks the horror of Dolores Roach.
It's a new Prime show. Just came out last week. And straight off the bat, I was like, you got to watch it. If you haven't watched it, watch it. Come back and listen to this because I loved it. I thought it was really, really strong and came out of nowhere. There was no buzz for it, I feel like, prior.
No, I had listened to the Spotify podcast. It was a podcast.
Oh,
and it I didn't remember the main actor, but the guy or Luis's character in the podcast was played by Bobby Cannavale.
Oh wow! But it's not based on a true story.
No, it is not based off a true story. If anything, I'd say this is a modern day Sweeney Todd. And
yes.
Yeah, I mean it's
Was there
really
anybody
fun.
other than Bobby Cannavale in the audio version?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think
because
so.
he would have been great, but I gotta say that character Luis, who owns the empanada shop, he is a revelation. I freaking love this guy, and I was trying to find out where I'd seen him before, and I guess he's one episode of Gotham that I might have recognized him from. He was working with the Mad Hatter or something. But he's just one of these actors that you feel like you've been watching forever, and it's probably the first or second time you've ever seen him because he's just so
likable.
Pitch perfect. What's his name? Alejandro Hernandez as Luis steals the show when you have so many other strong players in this. And of course, not only is it, as you noted, derivative of Sweeney Todd, but it could even go back to Titus Andronicus, which is ironically, it pops up as like a little Easter egg in the show because you have a character here who runs, I think, a main Broadway theater, or she has some bigwig job there. Anyway, she's also a private detective. We find out, played by the one and only Cyndi Lauper. Have you seen Cyndi Lauper act before?
You know what's weird is I kind of feel like I have.
No,
but I couldn't tell you. I thought she did a really fun job on this character.
I know.
I think she was. Her character was just an usher. I think she.
Was she just an usher? I thought she was a bigwig.
No, I don't know. I don't know if she was. Which is
you
even
might be
funnier.
right. Which makes sense why she'd be trying to make the money on the side here, and that she has
and that she's
friends
never
in the
missed
clinker.
a matinee.
Right.
She's actually there in
you're
the
right.
theater.
You're right. She feels like a bigwig though. She has such, strong energy. I guess you could say.
Definitely.
But let's talk about it because it does start actually in Broadway because you have this not meta frame because it's an actual frame set in the present of the story of Dolores being put on stage by one of the people who lived in the building with her when she was doing all the horrible things that she does. That being said, they're not all intentional. I want to know right off the bat, did you like Dolores? Did you have sympathy for Dolores?
I think they did a really good job of making you kind of like it's kind of earned. So the opening scene, we see like the end of a production, and potentially the run of the show, right? I think that they're like they finished their run. They're in talks of like negotiating to extend it. But the main character is in her dressing room, and then she is confronted by Dolores Roach. And in that moment, she is coming off very cold.
Yes.
And scary, like we don't know what she's done yet at this point. And at that point, I'm like, I don't necessarily like her. But when we see what she's been through and what she's endured, she really does a great job. She was a fun performer as well, an actor. I thought she did a really great job of making us like her.
I 100% agree. And there are moments that I want to talk about where she did lose my sympathy. But yeah, Justina Machado plays Dolores, and I remember her all the way back from 6 Feet Under, where she had a pretty strong supporting role. Federico's love interest in that, and he was essentially one of the head. He was second fiddle to Dexter, essentially, in 6 Feet Under. You know what I mean? He was the Undertaker or whatever. She's great in that. She has so much personality, and her deliveries are so badass most of the time, and you can see everything she's thinking in her face.
Mm-hmm.
I did really, really sympathize with her. I mean, we see her get out of jail after, we have the present metaframe Broadway, but then we're brought back to her finally getting out of jail. So
after 16 years.
16 years, right? So most of this actually does take place 16 years ago, like 2006 or 7 or something is when all this was purported to take place, I'm guessing. And then she goes back to her old neighborhood in Washington Heights, and it's all been gentrified. There's this really funny moment where she really seems to realize it's been gentrified when there's like middle-aged nerdy dude with glasses is walking with a big fern, like crossing the street with a big fern. You don't see, people walking around with houseplants that often. Back in the day, I'm reckoning. But you kind of see the shock in her, and she's a very easy character to glom onto and to sympathize with. I will say the whole love backstory, it ends up having a payoff, but at first it was like, oh, why are you going back to this guy, trying to go back to this guy, Dominic, who you kind of took the fall for. As we find out later, he set it up so she would, but she had no idea. She thought she was, doing the right thing for the person that she loved. She's very naive, very gullible too. Yeah. So, when we find out that, she becomes even more sympathetic. But I want to ask you, when is the first time that you lost a little bit of sympathy for her?
Well, I'm running through the episodes in my head right now. I feel like anytime she was mean to Joy, who runs the...
Oh my goodness, yes.
I'm going to pull up her...
Joy, played by Jean Yoon. And for those of you who are a fan of Kim's Convenience, which is one of the funniest sitcoms available on Netflix, I love this show. The guy who plays Shang-Chi is also in it as well. It has such a great cast. Definitely watch Kim's Convenience if you haven't. Yes, he's so funny.
It's gonna be,
but she's Barbie. The mom in that, and it was really fun to see her play something else because I hadn't seen her in anything else, and it was such a different part for her. She does play Joy, and she's the one more than anyone else, other than maybe Louise, that's trying to help her get back on her feet, is trying to get her a job as a masseuse at a proper place. But it falls through because she can't shake her past. It does deal with some interesting societal stuff.
Let me stop you right there, because I had just said that's when I lost. She kind of lost me.
Yes, because Joy had been so nice to her. I could see why when she starts being a dick to Joy in the latter episodes.
But is that when you?
No, much earlier. It was episode 2, and I totally understood, because ultimately Mark Maron's character is the building owner, the property manager, who's essentially about to kick out Louise, who has sheltered her in her time of need. And he's really sleazy, and she offers him a massage to kind of cool him off and give him some cash to kind of like put him off. And he's a dick. Like, Mark Maron's character is a dick. And then we find out later he's kind of a sleazy guy too.
Oh, yeah.
Which occurs when it's down there. He kind of like assumes things that Dolores was not offering. And then gets to the point where she feels like she has to kill him. But that's not where she lost me. It's when she laughs maniacally while doing it that she loses me. So she didn't need to be laughing as she was doing during this, because she's not a murderer. She didn't go to jail for murder. This is not something she does. It just seemed too much, too soon.
I totally see where you're coming from. But what I don't think the story does the greatest job of is showing how I think she has lost a large part of her humanity based on our judicial system after 16 years of being there. And I don't think they do the best job of showing like how she's kind of unhinged. They just sort of like break into it, because there's not,
that's a good point.
We're kind of just going off of like how that she's been wrong. And I don't believe that's justifiable for what she does. But I also believe that she has lost who she is as a human. And, our prison system treats people like animals, chews them up, spits them out. And so I understand where the laughing maniacally, but I just think that she has lost her mind.
Yes, and then you can't have sympathy for someone like that. But sometimes she does just feel so lucid because she really does want to be on the right track, and she's trying to make a honest living. I just didn't. You're right. If you want to attribute it to her having just gone bonkers because of jail, I mean, her lover in jail was the one who taught her how to massage, and she had her hands cut off in jail.
I know.
So that'll definitely mess with you.
Tabitha,
Tabitha's character. One thing I did want to say about this first and second episode and what it showed of Washington Heights is I lived in Brooklyn for like 4 months, and just the sense of like, everybody, even though there's so many people and just people sit on their stoops and there's not abnormal to just talk to strangers and sort of thing. I felt like it really gave the vibe. And granted, Washington Heights is in Manhattan versus Brooklyn, but it felt Brooklyn-y to me. I guess Brooklyn's kind of been gentrified now too, to a degree. Oh, yeah. But I really loved the mise-en-scène, right? What was going on in the background at all times was interesting. I mean, you see, even in that first episode, the drug dealer that's on the street working for her,
Hector?
Yes, Hector Pector. Which is hilarious. That's apparently his name. She does not take any guff from him. When he kind of comes up to her, she like smacks him and then takes his cigar and flicks the ash right at him. You know right away that she's a badass. She's not taking any shit from anybody.
Yep.
So it's a really strong character. A character I feel like we haven't seen be the lead. I feel like maybe we've seen supporting characters like this before.
Yeah.
But to kind of like drive a project like this, I thought was really fun to get behind the wheel with her on this one.
I completely agree, and I'm glad you brought up that moment because I think it says a lot about her character in that she hasn't lost that. I guess she hasn't lost her street cred, and the fact that she's been here longer. Like she used to run this street with her boyfriend, and she's not afraid of this massive man.
Yeah,
who's very intimidating. And then
he
also
does turn out to kind of be a pussycat, though. Later we find out.
Oh yeah. But the fact that she also criticizes how he's such a bad drug dealer, like flashing things, and I love that she kind of threw some notes out there. And I want to talk really briefly about that character, the boss, who is it Marcy?
Marcy, yes. People might recognize her from Scrubs. She's the nurse from Scrubs. And it's just awesome. She was in Smile recently, if you remember. A small bit part, not bit part, but smaller part. And she's great. She's able to flock so well.
She is great. And it's just Marcy almost sets her down this path because if she had gotten this, Marcy sort of ruins her job interview, if you will, so outing her as a recent ex-con. So Marcy kind of puts things into motion aside from, her ex who is, on the lam or potentially dead.
Yeah, right.
But it's really early. I mean, I think that's episode 1 where she almost has a job. She's almost going to be like going straight. And Marcy just swoops in and just destroys her.
Yep.
And she gets her comeuppance. But it was also a really nice spin to show that the new drug kingpin, if you will, is also a woman.
Right.
And
it could have been her if she didn't get screwed. That was her potential path, which makes their showdown a couple episodes later that much more satisfying. We're kind of burying the lead here because she kills Mark Maron, who I enjoy watching him act. Did you ever listen to his podcast?
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen his stand up a number of times. I used to see him. He used to come into the Improv when I worked there, and really nice, normal guy. But I agree. I love when he pops up into acting roles.
As do I. Yeah, I'm trying to seek out the stuff that he's been doing lately. I liked Glow. I didn't get through all of Glow, if I'm honest with you, and I don't blame him. I think he was one of the highlights of the show. But I wanted more of him. But I guess we kind of did get more of him hanging his hanging dead corpse. In later episodes. But we're burying the lead. Ultimately, Luis is in so much love with Dolores that he finds the body when she's gone out in this comical shopping spree to buy stuff to get rid of the body. And that in itself is a really fun scene. But she comes back and it's gone. And then she, of course, figures out, oh, crap, he is now making empanadas with Mark Maron meat. Which she really, really struggles with for a while until she kind of realized, what can I do? You know, she's kind of a victim of circumstance throughout this whole thing.
Right. Yeah. It's she's so fragile in the sense that she doesn't want to mess anything up because she'll go right back to prison. So she's kind of, victim of circumstance. Like this guy also just gave me a room when I had nowhere else to go. He's taken me in. He remembers me. He's the only thing that's really grounded from my past life. He's still here in the same shop. He idolizes her. It's like her one thing. Like, not only do you remember me, but you respect me.
Right. Loves her ultimately. And like
loves
for episodes and episodes is when is he going to want something back? When is he going to make that move? You know, and it never happens. And you just like continue to like love him. I love him more than Dolores for sure.
Yeah. They do a really nice thing with his character is that when she peeks into his room, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but it says a lot about who his character is. She peeks into his room and he's still, it's like seeing a kid's bedroom.
Well, I mean, like, when I look around, but yeah.
No. Sure. But that to me was why he's never made a move. He's still a little boy.
That's a good point.
He's looking up to this woman. He doesn't know how to make a move.
That's true.
He just doesn't want to scare her away, essentially, you know? It's
and he has a tragic backstory. I don't think it hurts to talk about that now because
no.
He is such a fleshed out character, but part of that is that he, I guess, had a relationship with his father's girlfriend, right?
Yeah, girlfriend.
Because his mother had died or ran away or something. And he was having this illicit relationship with his father's girlfriend when he was like 14 or something, really young.
I was going to guess around then, yeah.
And dad found out, everything went to shit until he kind of punished himself. He tries to cut off his own wang and isn't able to do it properly. He's bleeding out because he couldn't finish the job. So then he was right by the fryer and he just tosses all the oil on it to kind of like seal it up. So when in episode 6 or whatever, they finally get intimate, she sees this and like it kind of explains, like you mentioned, why he didn't know how to move forward, even though he did have this love for her. And we'll talk about what that might mean too at the very end later. But one thing I wanted to go back to is because when he's selling this human meat, right, he has his underling, his employee, go out there, Nelly go out there, giving away free samples of these meat empanadas on the street. My question to you is, would you eat a free sample of meat on the street?
You know, I'd like to say no, but it is right in front of a restaurant, right?
Yeah.
It's not unheard of. It's an empanada, right? So it's
yeah. I don't know. I don't think I could do it. I mean, granted, it would be normal there. I remember when I was in Brooklyn, there were so many meat carts, just like almost on every other corner of people with meat on a stick was like the thing. So much meat on a stick everywhere in Brooklyn is what I noticed. So I guess it might be kind of normal there. But I would struggle, even if it is in an empanada wrap. Starting to, after COVID, not want to.
That's a great point. Not after COVID, right?
Maybe before, but yeah, not now. Definitely not. But I digress. Let's get back into her murders and mayhems. Oh, one moment I did want to mention, though, is because Luis is so sweet, and he does set her up there in the basement to be the masseuse, and he gets her a fake license, and then when he's giving it to her, he's so cute, and then he starts singing the wedding song, thinking he's singing the graduation song, and it's just hilarious. These little moments that really make the show.
And those little things are so supportive of the character. It just the guy is so nice. It's like he doesn't have the full education, or he's still a child.
He's painfully
moment,
sweet. Yes.
Yeah. Like maybe the moment where he actually hurt himself, he was frozen in time.
I think so.
But it gets to a point where it's become a way for Dolores to just remove the problems in her life.
Right.
Now, she criticizes Luis for how he's getting rid of these bodies, but she's not helping him because she's just creating a pile of bodies in her wake. And there's another great character that I wanted to mention because he's in the first episode.
Jeremiah.
Yeah, the delivery man, who it's so great that they have this character who he's not trying to like hurt their business. He just wants a piece of the action.
Right.
So he notices when the murders start that they're not ordering as much meat from him, which is, that was bound to happen. You guys are going to find something isn't going to add up anymore, and not just missing bodies, but your web of lies is leaving a trail of clues.
And it might not have been that big of a deal if he hadn't had such a close connection to Luis's dad back in the day. Right. And it was kind of like taken for granted that he was their main meat source.
Yeah. And he promised to look after him. And it's kind of unfortunate that it's kind of like the wrong place, wrong time, because he just wants to pay his bills, but then it's like he just can't help but try to figure this out. He's following Dolores. He is that didn't even seem to bother me, which was weird. Normally I'd be like, that's a weird thing for a character to do, but he's kind of like us, where he's putting the mystery together.
Right.
It's just unfortunate that he's like, onto them. I wish he was a little bit more naive.
It is, and he does have one thing majorly wrong in that he thinks Luis is kind of the one that is controlling the whole situation, when it was really Dolores. They have such a funny moment in there where he said, just blink twice if it's really him. And she doesn't. And she has sympathy for him too. But I just want to mention, I love this actor, K. Todd, because he's from Buffy season 3. He is the mayor is the big bad in season 3, and he's second fiddle to the mayor as Trick, this really awesome vampire, one of the best henchmen, I guess you could say, in the whole show, and he lasts through all of season 3. And it's so fun to see him now in this role. I got to see him last year. He was in Nathan Fielder's show, The Rehearsal, too.
Oh, yeah.
Love this guy. He has such a great everything. I just adore him.
Yeah.
He's really fun. But you're right. He's a great character. All the secondary characters are so fleshed out. You got Nellie, and then we got to talk about Jonah, who is the son of Mark Maron, who's come in here, and he's like, where's my dad, for one? And this is where Luis's character becomes so much more complex, because he takes advantage of the situation and makes it seem like, oh, you're here with paperwork, right? To extend my lease. And from prior to that, it really just felt like he was kind of, like you said, childish, stuck in a time. But these are the moments where he is business savvy to the nth degree almost. Yeah. And he does care about Empanada Loco like it is his own child, which makes it so heartbreaking when Dolores then toward the end of the series is trying to get him to sell it to Jonah.
And I'm not saying that this is right, but he also knows what to do. Like, putting the meat into the food is not the smartest way to go, but he went into action immediately. And not only did he start thinking about what to do with the bodies, he started thinking about the phones, and he is very, very smart about it. Yeah. Again, maybe don't eat the people,
despite being stoned 24/7, he definitely he came up with some decent ideas. There was always something not quite great about, like, with the phone. Obviously you then have who is it, Cyndi Lauper's character, Ruthie, who's able to figure out that the pacemaker is tied, so she's able to find that Mark Maron's there. And this is the episode where she kills 2 people in a row, pretty much, for Hector Pector, Okay, this is the only one she didn't necessarily do on purpose, right? Because
and it's very comedic too.
It is very comedic. I mean, this is a big guy, and to see him then like go into anaphylactic shock because she put coconut oil on him and he's allergic to nuts, and she's like, I think that was an actual nut.
Yeah.
And then you have with the EpiPen, her stabbing him in the heart like Pulp Fiction. So much fun. And then of course Ruthie comes down there, calls her out, and then she kills him or her underneath Hector's body and ends up stabbing Hector accidentally too. It was just, such a fun sequence.
Comedy of errors. Yeah, it's also interesting that Cyndi Lauper is like, hey, I'm just going to walk away. We're not going to talk about this. We're going separate ways. And that's when she mentions the fact that she has never missed a matinee.
Yes,
and if she's gone, it's going to be an issue. And this is when I think Dolores is sort of just like beyond redemption.
Yeah.
Where she's just killing to like, I think she's just pissed off at Cyndi Lauper's character and is just like, I'm just going to murder you because I started,
Right.
But
she can't trust her. I think she would have told on her. I mean, it does make sense the way she spun it. But she was going to tell her, I think, no matter what. So it was the right thing to do in that sense, I guess. Saving her own ass. But then they try to rip off this poor Perlman kid to sell him the restaurant. And he's pathetically can't really gather the money, so they're willing ultimately to settle for like $15,000 cashier's check. And then of course that all goes to pot. This is after the bloodbath scene, which is hilarious because you had Luis draining the bodies in the basement into the drain, and all of it backed up into one of the tenants in the second floor's bathtub, just
into a literal bloodbath.
Yeah, that was fun. But it was great because Luis was then able to spin it on Jonah because he is technically the landlord. I just loved the way that it, was playing out. It was so smooth.
And poor Jonah, because he just doesn't want to get in trouble at this point. Like, he wants to prove that he's a man,
right?
Taking care of a business, impress Nellie's character. But I guess, this is that classic, you can't be in a happy relationship in this type of show because as soon as you're happy, things got to go. So Jonah is very happy. He spends the night with Nellie, and then he's just, Luis didn't lock the...
Nope, he was trying to be sweet and make her some breakfast and walks in. Yeah, he didn't take the sticker of the code off of the lock to the freezer where his father's head was just lying there. That one surprised me. She got him real quick and good. But you're right. I actually thought this actor was perfect for the role because he was like sweet as a button. He seemed like the most innocent actor I've ever seen on the screen for that age sort of thing. Like, perfect. And I felt bad. He was like one of the few that I was like, I didn't want him to die. He didn't deserve this at all. But it then was around then that I start to lose Luis, because then he comes downstairs. Everything is just like, the momentum is crazy. Joy comes down there. Her neck is hurt. She's got a crick. And this is right when poor Dolores has just been through it all. She's like really mean to her again. I love how they bring up the point that people call her mean, and she's like, I'm not mean. Love that little bit. But then this is the one that didn't deserve to die, right? Was Joy, because she starts to give her the back rub and then just breaks her neck out of nowhere, unnecessarily too, right? Because she didn't see anything. And that
no, I think it was just that she was annoying Dolores.
Yes, and that's where she's irredeemable. And at the end, when she says, "I am a monster," this is where I do think she's a monster. I don't think she's redeemable anymore, especially after the Joy moment. And I do love Luis's response when he finds out about Joy being killed. He's like, "Oh, I didn't see that coming."
Yeah, he's like part of the audience again, like. Or like he's us. Like I did not see that coming because Joy was so sweet. Like
right, and he literally has her on his shoulder at that time.
Yeah,
he was just casually carrying her around. It was so funny. But this is where I lose Luis, because what happened to Dolores, who he loves, now he's done to Nellie, and he's put the blame on.
Oh,
Nellie.
yeah.
This is where I lose Luis.
Yeah, this seemed like before Dolores walked into this world that Nellie felt like maybe Luis's only family, which, yes, she worked for him as an employee, but she also lived in the building. Like, she probably didn't make a lot of money there. It was just not okay for Luis to put it all on her.
It's unforgivable.
Yeah, but that's part of his blind obsession with Dolores.
That's
like
true.
He will do anything.
He's the
for
puppy
her.
dog.
He's got the fake IDs with their new names ready to go, and like he would have left his whole world behind in a second, but wasn't going to sell out to Jonah for franchising.
Right. He's
really
a very complex
up.
Character. That's what I love. All of them really were complex and complicated. And you couldn't really know what they were going to do next. And that brings me to let's talk about the final sequences. Where ultimately Dolores is done with Luis too, because of what he's done to Nellie. I mean, it's funny that she does have standards herself, and because of what happened to her, she can't take what he's done to Nellie, and she just tries to leave, but he chases her down. Right? What were you going to say?
Yeah. And I was going to say, do you think Luis deserves this kind of death? Out of all the murders Dolores has done to people, snapping necks, choking them out, like this seemed pretty violent.
Well, here is my theory. And no, I absolutely do not think that Luis deserved being dunked in the fryer and then ultimately set on fire. But I don't think he's dead, man. I think we're going to have another series of this. And I think he's going to be tracking down Dolores while she's tracking down Dom still, potentially. Dominic corrects. And I wanted to ask who you think was at the door at the very end.
I was going to ask you the same thing, because I think it would be way too easy for it to be Dominic. So who could it be?
It's got to be the Australian friend.
The Australian friend who
That's the only thing that makes sense, and the only thing that could potentially bring upon a whole new series of it, or season rather. Yep. And I do think that we're going to have Luis back all Freddy Kruegered.
Yeah, I agree.
Which I'm all for. I want to see him take a different angle with this same sweet character, because that is a backstory like no other for a supervillain. If they run with Luis the Friar, my God.
I agree. And, he's going to finally see through Dolores's selfish ways. She lied to him about, I'm done with Dominic. Like, it is the only driving force in her life.
That's true.
It may not even be for revenge. Like, will
she might take him back? Yeah, you don't know.
Right? Will she be able to kill Dominic? Probably not.
Well, I want to know. I do. I'm looking forward to possibility of it. And I know Prime's top 10, I don't think speaks the same way that Netflix top 10 does.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Even though it was there, we might not get it, but I'm hoping we do, because
I did think it was funny that there was a Jason Blum reference in it.
Oh, at the party at the end. Yeah.
And Blumhouse produced this. Jason Blum has been promoting the hell out of this show. Rightfully so. I think it's really funny. And in my life, it has kind of filled a small hole of where Santa Clarita Diet went.
I could see that. Yeah, the humor gore combo. Comedy. And you just made me realize, yes, so at that party you got Jason Blum, and you have the tenant who has the podcast who lived in the building, one of the few survivors, who's the one that kind of like wrote the Broadway show. And he specifically says, and next I'm doing the TV show. So that could be the base plot line of what's going on in the second series, is maybe she is pulling his strings now behind the scenes of the show based on her experiences. I could definitely see that guy coming back, and the TV show being a more central part of either production or release or something. But either way, I loved it. You got to see it.
Love it. I'd like to think that most of the people who listen to today's episode have seen it also. And
certainly hope so.
Or we just gave everything away.
Yes. Well, we were going to do, we forgot to mention this at the time, we were going to do Bird Box Barcelona, because I love the first Bird Box, but Bird Box Barcelona was very lackluster. It wasn't worth a cast, honestly, even though it's, I think, still in the top 10. People are watching it, but I don't know how you can really enjoy it that much.
Hey, listen, like you just said, I don't know how these platforms rank themselves. It might just be the fact that it's been the most watched. It doesn't mean it's like the
Right.
best that Netflix has to offer.
It's a strong
And,
name, and I almost feel like they squandered a potential franchise with
I
this
agree.
one. I don't know. I just didn't enjoy it. So don't bother with that. And then you mentioned you saw Quicksand, another one that just dropped on Shudder.
I saw Quicksand. It is a well-told story about a couple who, on the verge of divorce, they go to South America. Our main character is from Colombia. They're going to be speaking at a medical conference, but before that conference, they go out on a hike. They, for some reasons, there's a guy robbing their car in the middle of nowhere, but pushes them deeper into the woods. They fall into quicksand. And I will say that it was entertaining, but by no means was it as original. You know, it's
Got it.
a lot of what you'd expect.
Kind of like an open water and quicksand sort of vibe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, I watched it because I haven't seen a movie about people in quicksand before.
That's true. Yeah.
But if you think about it, it's like a lot of movies about being trapped in a location. So
fair.
It's, you know.
Fair. All right. All right.
Yeah, you don't have to check it out unless there's nothing else on Shudder. I would check it out. But
see Dolores first, that's for sure. And I'm sure everyone's going to see Oppenheimer. So you're going to be able to see Oppenheimer?
Yeah.
Cool. So we're gonna bring you an Oppenheimer cast. So get excited, people. But until then, stay alive.